have probably heard this story several times. Am I right? And if we're honest, our brain sometimes does this thing when we hear this story that we've heard so many times and kind of starts tuning out after the first couple words because our brain says, oh, we know that story. We know how that one ends. Check that off the list. Been there, done that, right? But I wonder how it might be if we listen to this story with fresh ears. And if there might be part of us that wonders, is this story even right? When you think about it, are you actually comfortable with how this story ends? Or is there a part of you deep down that kind of wishes that it was a little bit different because it just doesn't seem just? I think when we're listening to this story, it's important to try to think about what character in this story we identify with. And that can be tricky because at different points in our lives, we might relate to different roles at different times. Sometimes all of them. So we start with the younger son, the prodigal son. Prodigal means wasteful, reckless, extravagant, over the top, uncontrolled. I had to look it up. Any of you also want to admit that you've gone how many years hearing the story and not really known what the word meant? Yeah. So this son doesn't intend to be bad, I don't think. It's just that he sees this great big world out there, and he wants to explore it. And he's just not thinking about anyone but himself. He isn't really considering how it might affect his family, or how cruel it might be when he says, "Hey, Dad, I want my inheritance now." Which is sort of like saying, "Hey, Dad, I wish you were dead." He's just not there. He's just thinking about how he can't handle one more day at home, where he feels stuck and stifled. He just needs to get out. And then, for whatever reason, the father actually gives this younger son the money. And I don't think anyone is more surprised than this younger son. But now he's free. He takes it and runs. Now, if you look at birth order, the younger sibling is less likely to think about consequences. Anyone want to admit to being the younger sibling? Yeah, and it's just how it works. If you have people in your family, you can probably think, oh, that makes sense. Not always, there are exceptions. But, so this younger son isn't thinking about consequences. He's just thinking about all the fun he's having, breaking all of the rules. And then, the money runs out. And he finds himself on the streets and desperate. So desperate that he ends up taking a job feeding pigs. He was Jewish. Pigs were considered unclean. He was working for Gentiles. That was a whole lot of no-no-nos. But he did it anyways because he had nothing. And he was hungry. So hungry, he caught himself licking the pig's food off his fingers. And he goes, oh, I can't keep going on like this. Something's gotta change. But he didn't want to go home with his tail between his legs. He knew his dad was going to be mad. He had to figure out the right words to say, what he could get away with. Because he knew that at least at home, they probably wouldn't let him starve to death. Have any of you been in places in your lives where you were just busy thinking about just yourself and not how your actions would affect anyone else? Have you ever messed up so big that you doubted that God could ever forgive you? Have you ever wasted opportunities to do good and been reckless with the gifts you were given? Have you ever sinned and fallen short? I think we can all relate. And then there's the older brother, the responsible one. How many of you are the oldest sibling? I'm curious. So did you oldest siblings often find that you were the one making sure that stuff got done? Did you find yourselves getting stuck cleaning up your younger siblings' messes? Did you get in trouble when they always got away with it all? So this older brother, he was the one who did what he was supposed to do. He stayed. He did the right thing. He'd be kind of like the one coming to church every Sunday morning, rain or shine. The one who makes sure that they're there for the Ash Wednesday service and the Maundy Thursday service and all the lunch, soup, and suppers and the community meals and everything else, not expecting a thank you, but because it's just what you do. Right? And here comes his little brother back. That spoiled brat who has made a mess out of his life, who treated the family like garbage, who wasted all of their father's money, who hasn't contributed, who's basically a leech, and he's the one who's getting a party? That's not fair. That doesn't seem right at all, does it? The older brother should get the party for staying, not the little brother for coming back. That's kind of messed up, isn't it? Can any of you see the older brother's point? Did any of you kind of say, hey, this isn't how it should have ended? We're there. And then there's the father. The character of the father is one that sometimes we've all been thrown in that role. When someone who loves us has hurt us. Or maybe more so that we have been hurt by watching them hurt themselves. Because sometimes that's worse. And we know that the right thing to do is to use tough love and teach them responsibility and consequences. But when we see them alive for the first time, especially if it's your child, especially if you've been worried sick, what are you going to do? You drop everything and run to them and hug them and hold them and cry happy tears because they're breathing. Now, the world would say that the father welcoming the son back and throwing a party for him is wrong. The world would say that is wasteful and reckless. The community of that time would probably shame and shun the father for doing what he did, for not making him take a position as the lowest ranking servant and earning his way back up. Because the world sees relationships as transactional. The world believes that if we are good and righteous and do what we're supposed to, God will reward us because we've earned it. And the world believes that if we are lazy and make poor choices, God will punish us because that's what we deserve. I think sometimes we've bought into what the world believes. But in Luke's gospel before us this morning, in this story, it becomes pretty clear that the world does not understand God. The world has it wrong. The world doesn't get it. The words that Jesus chooses to put in the Father's mouth in this story are very important, because it is by these words that we understand what God is like. And what do we hear the Father saying to the older son? You are with me always. Everything I have is yours. And your brother's back. So we have to party. Because our relationship with God is not transactional. It's not about what we do. Both brothers had it wrong. The one who thought he should be rewarded for staying, and the one who thought he shouldn't be welcomed back. Because our relationship with God is about God's outrageous, uncontrolled, reckless, wasteful, amazing, unconditional, no matter what, love for us. And through our relationship with God, we find that God is with us always, no matter what. That everything is given to us. And when those brothers and sisters come back, we party because we have been adopted in our baptism as God's beloved children. We have been given grace upon grace. In whatever role in the story we're in. Not because we deserve it, because we don't. but because we are God's beloved children. That's it. That's all. There's nothing we have to do to earn it, and there's nothing we can do to earn it. But because we know it changes us. It changes how we live. And we begin to live as grace-filled people. Because we have been welcomed back home every time, we welcome others in every time. Because we have been loved and cared for, we love and care for others. Whether or not we think they deserve it, because they do, because they are God's children too. And we work for justice, not just for ourselves, but for others. And we work for peace, not just so that we can go to sleep at night, but so that everybody can sleep peacefully at night. And we ignore what the world says about trying to shame us or shun us for having a kind of love that is over the top and reckless and wasteful and prodigal. Because that's the kind of love God has for us. And so we continue to love with that prodigal love, with that unconditional, no matter what, everybody's in love. For those who don't look like us, for those who do not think like us, for those who do not love like us, for those who do not live like us, for those who do not speak like us, for those who do not vote like us. For everyone, no exceptions. Because God doesn't have any exceptions for us. Amen.